Welcome to the Build Your Private Practice podcast, a space for Canadian therapists who want to support others, make an impact, and build a sustainable practice that works for them too. I'm your host, Liane Wood, a registered psychotherapist, group practice owner, and business mentor, and I'm here to help you build a private practice that allows you to keep doing the work you love without burning out. Because the people who need your help the most are counting on you, and you deserve a practice that supports you while you support them. Let's dive in. Well, welcome back to the Build Your Private Practice podcast. This is a space for Canadian therapists who want to build a sustainable practice that supports their life, not drains it. I'm your host, Liane Wood, registered psychotherapist, group practice owner, and business mentor. And today we're talking about something that doesn't get enough honest airtime in our field: money. Not just how much you make, but how you manage it, how you pay yourself, how you create stability, and how you stop feeling like you're fully booked, but still financially stressed. Because here is what I see frequently: incredible therapists building practices, but without clear financial systems behind them. And no one taught us this. So today, I've invited someone who specializes in this exact conversation. I'm joined today by Sherry Andrews. So, hello, Sherry.
Hello.
Sherry is the founder of Money Mindset Financial Coaching, and she works closely with business owners, including mental health professionals, to help them build simple, values aligned money systems. She's based right here in Ontario, Canada. And what I love about her approach is that it's not about restriction or shame, it's about clarity. It's about confidence, and it's about building financial systems that allow you to actually breathe in your practice. Sherry, I'm so glad you're here.
And I'm so excited to be here and share some money tips and things to do in your business with your audience.
Amazing. Well, before we get into strategy, I'd love to start with your story. You mentioned to me earlier that your path into this work actually started with getting fired from what you felt was a safe job. And I think so many therapists will resonate with that moment of disruption. So, can you walk us through what happened and how that experience led you to where you are now?
Yeah, it was a crazy time in my life and I had no idea that it was coming and no warning whatsoever, no even like little spidey sense in the back of my head. And one morning the manager called me into his office and you see HR there, and that's
Hmm.
when the warning signs start to go off. And
Right.
I was let go from a position in a manufacturing plant in a leadership, kind of middle leadership role, and had to walk out that day and had been there for almost 17 years and had a lot of established relationships, including met my husband there. And
Okay.
it was all I had known for so long. And so much of our identities are wrapped up in our careers that, like, leaving that, being forced out, was really kind of like it had me reflecting, and just woke up the next day and had nothing to do and felt so much like lack of purpose because like I lived and breathed for that job and would get calls all of the time, all hours of the day, work shift work. And then the next thing I did was to look at my money, and everything I learned about that gave me some breathing room to figure out what was next. And then through working with a career coach of my own and going on a trip to figure out, oh, there are people in this world that enjoy their jobs and they don't take vacations to escape their jobs. That really had
Mhm.
me pausing and reflecting. And through the work with the career coach, she gave me a nice, gentle shove to figure out, what would something like that look like for you? What would it be? What could you enjoy as a career? And like, oh, I've really enjoyed learning more about money and making changes with our household finances. And her next question was, well, what does that look like? Could that be a career or a profession? And I immediately dismissed it. And thankfully, she's like, no, go look into this more. Don't just dismiss it. So then I
Mhm.
found first financial counseling,
Yep.
and then like, yeah, the journey just started there. And so thankful for getting fired from that job. And 2, 3 months out, it had me reflecting how
Yeah.
high stress that job was and how I was just functioning at such a high level of, like, very close to burnout. And like
Mm,
every 2, 3 months, some poor soul would come and ask me a really calm question, not a high pressure. And that would be my breaking point at
mm,
that time period. And yeah, reflectively, you're not supposed to cry at work
mm,
most commonly. And if you do, that should be something that's a red flag. And
mm,
I like to
mhm,
say that getting fired was my 2 by 4 moment because there was enough small signs that it wasn't the path I should be on,
mhm,
but I was ignoring them. And it took
mhm.
that big moment of, no, no, this is not for you. Move on, find what's next.
Wow. Wow, that's an incredible story, Sherry. Hmm. I love how, you've been able to shift it from, this being this terrible tragedy to, saying, I'm so glad that happened, you know? One thing I see often in private practice with therapists is there's this like disconnect, right? Therapists are incredibly skilled clinicians, but when it comes to things like money, there's just avoidance, right? We don't look at numbers consistently. We don't actually know what we need to earn. And sometimes we're unsure how to even pay ourselves properly. And taxes, oh my goodness, right? That just feels like a looming threat instead of a planned expense. So, from your perspective, why do you think so many helping professionals struggle with money clarity and what's underneath that?
Oh, that's a great question because when we're in those helping professions, there can be bad energy around helping people and using that as a means to financially support ourselves. We just want
Hmm.
to help. And
Hmm.
we would probably continue to help in some capacity, even if we won $1 million in the lottery, because we love what we do and we love having that impact. So sometimes it just feels icky to people that are in those helping professions to collect money and earn revenue and run a business and pay yourself and be financially stable and be able to be in a position where you do the things you want in your personal life. And it can result in, not following up on unpaid invoices, not sticking to policies that you've got set in place for cancellations and no shows, and really
Hmm.
not having those boundaries and standing up for yourself when it comes to this is your profession, this is what you do to support yourself and your families financially.
Yeah, yes to everything that you just said. Is, as soon as you're talking about that ick factor of I just want to help, and yet this is the way that I earn my living. I'm like, yes, how many times have I heard that and experienced it myself, right? We're like, oh, I'm doing this thing to help you, and now I'm going to charge you. It can feel, yeah, really challenging. Really, really challenging. So maybe let's shift a little bit and talk about some practical stuff because, I'm just thinking as you're talking, if someone is listening to this conversation right now, they might be thinking, okay, I know I need to get a handle on this, but I don't even know where to start. So, like, what would you say are the first steps? Like, how does someone figure out how much income they actually need? How do they figure out things like, business expenses, personal expenses, taxes, that consistent salary? How do we do that?
It really all starts with looking at where you're at and having that awareness. A lot of
Mm,
people who are feeling some blocks around looking at their money avoid looking at their bank account, avoid looking at their business income and their expenses, and they really have a complete lack of clarity around everything. And there can often be a lot of resistance to, and feelings of shame and overwhelm and so many negative feelings that come with looking at their money, which the longer you go without looking and understanding and getting clarity, the more resistance we feel to doing it. So I encourage any listeners, if this feels like I'm in your head and we're checking all the boxes, just set a chunk of time to get clarity with where you are and really look at it from a time of this is just information. I'm getting the
Mhm.
numbers to understand where I am right now. And then I'm just going to not take all of the next steps. So, understanding if you have debts, what are those debts? What are your payments? What are your interest rates? What do you have owing as back taxes, maybe if you've got that as a debt? And then looking at the flip side, maybe
Mhm.
this is through looking at past taxes. Maybe you've got a bookkeeper, which highly recommend doing that early in your business if you're avoidant to your numbers. And
Mhm.
what does your business take? How much does it cost to run? What does it look like in a year? And what did your revenue look like in the last 2, 3, 6, 12 months? Just to really understand what is your full picture,
Mhm.
and then that can help you look forward and think about next steps. Because even though you're self-employed and your income is going to have some ups and downs, there's probably some seasonality to it. I know some mental health professionals that I work with, they see some dips in December and in the summer. So being able to plan for those things and look at your revenue from an annual perspective so that you can put things in place like taking time off, paying
Mhm.
yourself a consistent salary, including saving for taxes in your numbers, and having that number of what is the minimum I need to earn to save for taxes, pay my business expenses, and pay myself the salary that I need to pay myself to
Mhm.
support things on the financial side personally. Because
Mhm.
that, like, yes, we love what we do, but
Mhm.
we also do it because we need income to live our lives. So really having that number, and when I work with my clients and have them work through all of this and then see, to do all of this, I need to earn at least this in my business, and
Mhm.
having those different levels of I can get to my goals faster and I can save for the things I want to, having different levels of business income
Right.
can really help break down any resistance that we might have consciously or subconsciously to growing our business income because
Mhm.
we don't have that clarity. It can
Mhm.
really help in those first few months after that to springboard their income, because even though we probably don't realize it, if we're not in a place where we're regularly saving for taxes and thinking about our future in our
Mhm.
business, we can be resisting income. Because if we think, oh, well, I'm making $5,000 a month now and my tax bill is going to be this and I'm not
Mhm.
ready for it, and I'm scared about that. So if I earn 7,000 in my business, that tax bill is going to get bigger and scarier.
Yeah.
So we're probably resisting some things that are going to lead to growth in our business. And it really feels like an unlock when we look at those next month's revenue with some service-based businesses and like, what happened? What
Yeah.
happened? And they're like, oh, I stopped avoiding my money. Because you
Mhm.
can
Yeah. Mhm.
pay yourself that consistent salary and build in those blocks for vacation, and understanding how to do that and how to get it set up, especially if you're established in your business and
Yeah.
you've been winging it and working more and burning yourself out in the periods when you needed to pay those tax bills and all of those things. It can be a challenge to get it set up at first, but it is so very worth it. Excuse me. It's so very worth it to know I've got a buffer here to pay myself when I take 2 weeks off in July. I'm going to be
Mhm.
okay. I've got enough to pay myself for the next month, even if I earn zero income, and then two
Mhm.
months and 3 months. And it's really more like an emergency fund in your business too, because things will happen,
Yeah.
and that allows you to have less stress when they do happen.
Yeah, yeah. I'm even thinking of like taxes, right? Like that can be scary when that you talk about emergencies, but sometimes even just getting a tax bill can be really, disconcerting and upsetting when you don't have a plan for it. And it's just such a different space to be in when there is a financial plan in there, right? Like, you sort of accounted for. You're like, yeah, this is going to happen. So how do I prepare for it? Coming from, being proactive instead of reactive with the finances, right?
Yes, yes, 100%. And the thing that I love to be able to have that clarity in my business is to use separate accounts for things. The number of accounts I have on the personal side might overwhelm some people, and on the business side, and the goal of it is to give money a job as soon as possible, because as soon as we tell, hey, you chunk of business income, you are to pay myself my consistent salary. That's where you
Mhm.
go. And it
Yeah.
becomes a placeholder. And the same with taxes. As soon as that money comes in, giving it a job to do helps separate it in our mind. When everything's all in one bank account and we're trying to save up for taxes and create a buffer for our salary and our expenses all in one business account,
Hmm.
it gets very busy. And maybe people are doing that and they've got a spreadsheet to figure out exactly what's what, but then you've got to maintain that
Yes.
spreadsheet. And
Yes.
if you look at your banking app and you see what's in your business income account, you've got to do so much mental math or pull
Hmm.
up your spreadsheet to really figure out,
Hmm.
do I have a buffer? Can I take time off? The
Hmm.
questions too, like finding the answers to, can I do X on the business and the personal side, comes from that clarity. And I love the separate accounts to do that.
It sounds almost, when you're talking about the separate accounts, that it sounds a little bit like the profit first model. Are you familiar with that, Sherry?
I am, and it's actually one of my favorite books.
Ah, yeah. I don't have it on my like it's on my bookshelves. It's not quite close enough for me to hold up, but I talk about the book Profit First for therapists all the time
Yep,
because it's really specific to being in private practice, and it is that idea of separating out the money and giving it all a job, right? So that money comes in, and a portion of it goes to taxes, a portion of it goes to your pay, portion of it goes to operating expenses. So you don't have to do, like you were talking about, right? That mental math of, do I have enough money this month to cover my expenses and pay myself a salary? You can just look at the bank accounts and go, oh, that one's for owner's pay and that one's for my operating expenses, and this is where I am. And there's no math, there's no guessing.
yep. And this one's for my bonus, and I like that one the most.
Yeah. Amazing, amazing. Well, I know that, sometimes therapists, we talked about, you mentioned it just a moment ago, right? Just having a personal account, or maybe they have a business account, and this idea of just randomly transferring money around, when they need it. And can we just like talk for just a moment of, when you get those separate bank accounts, when you start to have that plan, how do you think it shifts people's identities from being, say, a clinician who happens to run a practice to being a practice owner?
That is also a great question. It gets you out in front of your money, and it comes from a place of running your business like a business. And the two things don't have to be separate. You can
Mm-hmm.
be a helper and
Mm-hmm.
run a profitable, growing business. They
Mm-hmm.
can happen together. And when they do happen together, you're less stressed out and you're less worried about money, and you're able to make better decisions for the business owner side of you. And I'm sure we've all done this early in our business. We've been talking to a potential client and we've said yes when our gut's telling us, no, I'm not the right person for this particular client. I know somebody who is, and I should refer them, but I've got an opening next week and I just had somebody
Mm-hmm.
reduce their sessions and I really need this money. And then we feel that different energy when we're going into those
Absolutely.
sessions, those like, whoo, yeah, this is not something like, yes, there's always going to be challenging sessions, but if we get that permission to have
Mm-hmm.
money to be able to say, or to be in a financial position to say, you're not the best client for me, I'm going to refer you to somebody who's going to be a better fit, that frees up a space to welcome somebody who is going to be a really
Mm-hmm.
good fit. And that energy is just so very different.
It absolutely is. And I, so appreciate like what I'm hearing you talk about is alignment, right? Alignment with who you are as a practitioner, who the clients are, and being aligned with your values is so important because even though we're talking about money, right? This is not just about spreadsheets. It really is, I think, about, building a life that feels good And so, Sherry, can you maybe speak to a little bit to, like what does values-based spending actually mean? And how can therapists use this to reduce guilt and increase intention?
Oh, being able to spend based on your values and in alignment with what's important to you is really the key shift that my husband and I made after I lost my job. Because when I look back reflectively with what I know now, I can see we were spending on vacations and like leaving the country to escape the pressures of my job
Yeah.
and spending in a lot of other ways that I look back at. I think about 2 years after I lost my job, I looked back and to compare our
Mhm.
spending before versus after, and it had decreased. The discretional spending portion had decreased by, I believe it was 76%.
Wow, that's a big
And
number.
it's huge. It's huge. And the difference being it didn't create a feeling of restriction
Hmm.
because I wasn't spending to try and escape the stresses of my job. I was spending based on what brought me joy and what made me happy. And if I look at the things I was spending on then and the things I'm spending on now, it brings me so much more joy and it feels so much more in alignment. And like I really focus on what's going to make me feel contentment. And we've talked a lot about sometimes like I really want to be happy. I want to feel like this. And like happy is great, but it's not a state we can be in all the time. But
Mhm.
contentment and that peace and that feeling of alignment, those are places we can live all the time. And when you find that in your career, but also in your money, it's really important and it's an impactful shift. And when you give yourself permission to spend, one of the things that I love to do is my husband and I do it, and I set it up with a lot of my clients too, is have an account that is just for you to spend on whatever you want, whenever you want, with
Mhm.
no shame or judgment. And we fund this account by putting money into it every time you pay yourself or monthly, whatever that frequency looks like. And then it's part of your plan. It's not taking something away from somebody else or something else.
Mhm.
And this works really well for people that are savers and people that tend to be overspenders.
Mhm.
Because for the people that tend to be the savers and never spend any money on themselves and always say no to themselves and yes to other people and yes to putting money in savings, it gives yourself permission. You're like, this is for me to spend.
Mhm.
And for people that are spenders, it helps you still have that permission to spend, but
Mhm.
with that boundary of knowing if I spend this much, if I drain my account, it's okay. I'm still able to make my debt payments, reach my financial goals, do all of these other things. And it puts some boundaries around it, but not brick walls. Because when we start to shift and say, I'm never going to,
Yeah.
we don't stay with that for very long. There's a lot of connections between our eating and the things we want to do or not want to do and our spending. And I love chocolate. And if I tell myself, oh, I'm not going to eat chocolate ever again, I don't,
Mhm.
I take away that permission for me to do it.
Yeah.
Maybe I do it for 2 days, a week. It's not going to last very long. And then
Right.
I'm going to
Right.
make up for lost time. And
Yeah.
then it's going to end up being worse than if
Mhm.
I just gave myself permission
Mhm.
to, when you feel like you want chocolate, have some chocolate, maybe not fistfuls, but have
Yep.
that, find that balance with things. And it's
Yes.
the same with your money, giving yourself permission with some boundaries and some guidance really helps to, again, align that spending with the life that you want to build and with the financial stability you want to create for yourself.
Yeah, that's so good, Sherry. One of the things as you're talking that I'm thinking about is, I often get asked the question, when I'm working, you say when you're working in alignment with your values and the money and everything, you're talking about this actually leading to working less and not more. And, when you said there a moment ago, Sherry, that your discretionary income reduced by over 70%, like that's the key, right? Like, when you can look at things and going, okay, what am I doing that is not in alignment? It's not just income that's not in alignment, it's also your expenses. right? And so when you can get your income aligning with who you are and what your values are and your expenses aligning, it's often that, people are realizing, oh, I don't have to work these crazy hours. Oh, I don't have to say yes to absolutely everything. There's flexibility, there's room.
Yep. Yeah, and coming from years and years of actually having a competition with one of my peers about who had worked the most overtime year to date,
Oh my goodness.
and the winner had worked the most hours, which reflectively I can see is ridiculous now, to a here's my hard boundaries around these are the hours that I want to work. These are the hours that I open up for client facing time,
Mhm,
and I'm only able to take on X number of new clients every month, and I only want to work a maximum of 40 client facing hours in a month.
mhm.
Really helps me to hold those boundaries, and having
Absolutely.
that financial piece of it with, okay, if I do these things and I work these hours, what does the financial piece look
Mhm.
like? And it all needs to work together to give you that clarity.
Oh, yes. Yes. Amazing. Amazing. Well, I would, love to end this a little bit on something that's hopeful because, I know from the therapists that I talk to that there are so many who feel behind when it comes to the topic of finances and money. I hear things like, I should know this already, or I'm bad with numbers, or I've really messed my bank accounts up, right? So, Sherry, what would you say to the therapist who's listening to this, who maybe feels embarrassed about their finances, and what do you want them to truly believe after this conversation?
First, I want them to know that they're not alone, but you feel alone because there is so much shame around talking about money. And the people
Hmm.
that tend to be talking about money are the people that are holding up the 100K balloons on Instagram and telling you about how good they're doing.
Hmm.
But there are so many people in similar situations to you who are in avoidance, feeling shame and feeling stuck. And the fact that you're here listening is a huge thing that I want you to celebrate and be proud of yourself, because that shows that you're ready for change. And
Hmm.
you are, it's so possible for you. You are capable of change, and you're not bad with money. You just haven't had the systems or the guidance to set up those systems that works with who you are and your brain, because we're all different, and we get on Google and we're searching things and it tells us to do this, this, and this. And
Hmm.
that may work really well for some people. And if you tried it and it didn't work for you, we think we are broken, we are the problem.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
as somebody who is new to not killing all the plants in my house, it's if the environment were wrong for your plant and it was dying, it was in a dark cellar and it was dying, you wouldn't think that plant does not have its act together. That plant should really work harder to try and grow in this dark, damp space. No, we think, oh, this is silly. It obviously needs sunlight. We're going to move it. So the same
Hmm.
is true with you. Moving that plant is like for you finding that system for you that works for you to manage your money. And I love the book Profit First, and I've implemented myself in my business, but I've made so many tweaks to it as well, because it doesn't work exactly as it is for everybody. I do my transfers less often. I have at least one more, maybe two more accounts to customize things to me. So if
Hmm.
something doesn't work for you, try adjusting it. Think about what's not working and what
Hmm.
could I adjust to make it work, because we're all capable of being in a good position with our money, and we don't have to be good at math, because there's all those tools that can help us. And we chatted briefly, like before we started recording, about taxes being a big challenge
Hmm.
for your audience, which I feel I've supported a lot of people who we start working together and one of their debts is a good chunk owing in back taxes,
Yeah.
and being able to reduce the barriers to save for taxes consistently is really important. And one of the
Mhm.
biggest barriers I find is, well, I don't know how much I should save for taxes because
Mhm.
I haven't done my bookkeeping yet.
Mhm. Mhm.
And the
Mhm.
the amazing thing with the profit first method is that it gets rid of that reasoning for not being able to save, because you're saving a percentage of whatever you brought into your business,
Mm-hmm.
not of what's left over after you paid your expenses. You know what is in your bank account, so you know what needs to go to the other accounts, and designating, starting with taxes. If you have
Yeah.
one account for your business right now and I know I should be doing this, 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 and this, take one step. And that one step I would recommend is setting up a separate account, if you don't already have it, for
Mm-hmm.
tax savings. And every time you're transferring money from your business account to your personal account, save a percentage of that into a tax account. And sorry, step zero is if you don't have a business account, to set one of those up so that you can separate that business income and your business expenses from the personal side, because that can be another huge resistance to tax time, because then you're, not only do I have to figure out where all of my expenses and my income were, I have to sort through all of my personal transactions to find that information. And when you're doing that, you're not going to remember from January the year before what
No.
Amazon purchase was business and which ones were personal.
Mm-hmm.
There's, and to sort through all of that, you're
Mm-hmm.
definitely leaving money on the table by paying more in taxes because you're missing expenses.
Yeah, so true. So true. I love that. Those are a couple of really easy steps. If you don't have a business bank account, get one. If you don't have a tax account separate, get one. Those are, it doesn't feel too overwhelming, hopefully, for people. Well, Sherry, I want to say thank you to you so much for being here and for making this conversation feel, practical and human. So thank
Yes,
you.
and one other piece of advice is, if you have
Yeah.
any professional in your life, especially if they're related to your finances, and you don't feel comfortable asking them questions and saying, I don't understand, can you explain it to me in a different way? They're probably not the financial professional for you. Just
Mm.
like you need to be able to be comfortable asking those questions and making sure you understand, because it's your life, it's your money, it's your business. And there's too many professionals out there who are not the most professional and don't create those comfortable spaces, but there are people out there that do. And it's important that you find people you are comfortable with.
Absolutely. Absolutely. For those of you who are listening, if this episode has brought anything up for you, I want to encourage you to let that be information, not shame. You are not bad at the business side of private practice. You were probably simply never taught how to run one, and the skills that you need for that are completely learnable. Now, if you would like to connect with Sherry, we are going to include her website and social links in the show notes so that you can explore her resources and see what might be a fit for you. And as always, if you are ready to build a private practice that supports your life, not drains it, make sure that you are subscribed to this podcast. And if you're looking for step by step support tailored specifically to Canadian therapists, head over to our website at buildyourprivatepractice.ca. There is a whole bunch of free resources there and information on our programs that are waiting for you there. You do not have to figure this out alone. I'll see you next time. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Build Your Private Practice podcast. If today's episode resonated with you, I'd love it if you'd subscribe, leave a review, or share it with a fellow Canadian therapist who needs this. And remember, the work you do matters. Keep showing up, keep holding space, and keep building a practice that works for you. If you're looking for practical tools or support to grow your practice with more clarity and confidence, head to buildyourprivatepractice.ca. There's lots waiting for you there. I'll see you next time.